England top the group then after a 2-0 victory over Panama. Welcome into our ESPN FC studios. I'm Dan Thomas, Craig Burley alongside me. Once again, it wasn't exactly impressive from England, but they did enough to get the 3 points, which guarantees them top spot and, in theory, an easier draw in the round of 32. Croatia would beat Ghana by 2-1 to guarantee second spot. Ghana, meanwhile, in third, which means that officially Scotland are eliminated. Right, for more on what we saw from England today, Stewart Robson joins us. Oh, God, I've got two very negative people here for this.
That's not correct, Dan. So you're the negative one.
Here we go. Right. Robbo, top of the group. They would have obviously taken that at the start of the tournament.
Oh. Absolutely, yes, they would have done. But I think today posed more questions than it gave Thomas Tuchel answers. You know, in the first 60 minutes, they didn't play particularly well. It's similar to the game against Ghana. If you look at the wide players, was there enough quality? Saka fully fit. Rashford was hit and miss at times. Harry Kane didn't get involved in the game enough in those early stages. The one good thing about the performance, I thought, from the start to finish, was Jude Bellingham. Until he went off with 15, 20 minutes to go. He was what you want Jude Bellingham to be. He was dynamic. He didn't just make forward runs. He did the defensive side of the game as well. He played a little bit deeper. He looked like a top-class, world-class midfield player today, and England need that if they are going to progress.
The only one on the pitch, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, but you just know that when push comes to shove, and Declan Rice is fully fit, and we believe from the previous game that he's got a little bit of a knock. You just know he's going to go back to Declan Rice and Elliot Anderson, and one of them, well, it's probably going to be Jude Bellingham, but, you know, a Bellingham or a Rodgers-type player in front of him. He's going to go back to that more defensive, more fearful structure, and I agree. I think England, you know, certainly Bellingham looked better doing the sort of dual role today. Not that he doesn't do that, but he certainly had more responsibilities. But I do think Thomas Tuchel will go back to the two more defensive midfielders to protect that back four. That's just, I think that's his nature, rather than, you know, trying to be a bit more expansive, which England have not been. Look, yeah, right, you know, it's an ageing Croatia side, it's an average Ghana side, and it's a not very good Panama side. You know, they would have had to have been really bad. They've not been great. They would have had to have been really bad not to win this group. But if you're an England fan here in North America, or if you're an England fan back home in the UK, what's the thought process that you know, we've done what we need to do and we will get better, or we've done what we need to do and I can't see England getting any better? Because I don't know what side of the fence the fans are on, because I'm on the side of the fence. I don't see where the uptick's going to come. As Robbo mentioned, I don't see the wide players all of a sudden producing, because Saka had an inconsistent end to the season. He wasn't always fit. He had the injury issues. Rashford had a decent season at Barcelona, but he's in bad news in terms of, you know, his future. He's probably going to have to go back to Man United. Anthony Gordon is in the squad, didn't play. So if they are going to be successful, they're going to have to get more out of their wide players. And I think there's a big question mark over that. And I also would worry about this England side when they play better sides about the back four.
Is there a counter argument to say when they play better sides, there'll be more space?
Yes.
So therefore, they'll be able to attack.
But there'll also be more space for the opponents. And then the question will be, who has the more quality in an open game? Now, England do have it, but do they have the players in form? Again, you would sort of question that. Harry Kane, obviously, but I mean, he needs a supply line. That would be the worry, that when it becomes a boxing match and it's not a jabbing game, but it's full out punches been thrown, and it is stretched and it is end to end, England have enough. And I think at this moment in time, there's a lot more, I think Robbo said it, a lot more questions than answers. That being said, if they pick the pace up in the knockout stages, that's fine. I haven't got a problem with that, but they're going to have to do that, otherwise they will go out of this competition.
Rob, I'll ask you the same question that I did after that draw against Ghana. How can they look so good in patches in that game against Croatia and so flat in these last two matches?
Well, and they were reeling off stats on the TV today, as they often do, and it seems as though England get better as the game goes on. It's the last 20 minutes, which was against, it was probably all the second half against Croatia. It was the last 20 minutes against Ghana. It was the last 20 minutes again today. They've got to start off much quicker. They've got to start off at a higher tempo. The players have got to make better decisions right at the start of the game. But the worry for me slightly, and I'm sure it was for Thomas Tuchel, the back four, as Craig just said, was slightly worrying. Konsa at times Quansah, shall I say, almost was playing as a right-sided centre-back because the left-back O'Reilly was pushing into midfield to support Anderson. And against a very average Panama side, Panama created 1 or 2 half chances and their movement was good. And England looked a bit stretched against the better teams, as Craig just said. That would be a big problem, I think, for that back 3, back 4.
No, coming into this World Cup, or certainly before he named the squad, which I think did raise a few eyebrows, the actual squad within itself. And I know he's got an issue now with the Reece James, and that full-back area is a problem. And as we know in the modern game, the full-back position is very important now. More important than it was, probably 10, 15, 20 years ago. That position has become almost a key where you squeeze into midfield, where you are almost a second winger. So he has some issues in 1 or 2 positions and some food for thought. But if you said to me before he named his squad, I would have found it difficult not to find a pathway for England to the semi-finals as a minimum. But having seen the squad and having watched them, I think actually depending on this bracket, and we know it's a very convoluted bracket at times, but we're finding out a little bit more about where they're going to go. Quarter-finals to me is kind of where this team at the moment look as if they're good enough to get to,
right,
but not much further, dependent on who they draw.
Robbo?
I fully agree. I thought England would have a great chance of winning the World Cup. I had them in the top 4, but I've been disappointed with their performance. Yes, they might get better. They might get more confidence. But as I said, I think Tuchel at the moment is not quite sure what his first team's going to be. And none of the players, apart from Bellingham, have really stood up and said, yeah, I'm the player for this job. I'm the player for this role. It's a mix and match at the moment. So lots of things for Tuchel to think about. He's got to get the ingredients absolutely right for England to progress much further than the quarterfinals, I think.
Do you think, Robbo, that this England team has the makeup within this current squad to absorb a match that's going against them? Because they haven't really had to have that. The Croatia, as I mentioned, were an aging side. Ghana are average, and Panama have lost every game. So England have generally, without playing well, have dominated the ball. Do you think they have what it takes, Robbo, to absorb a very good Portugal, a very good Argentina, Brazil, or Spain or France performance in terms of the shape of this team?
Well, you mentioned it earlier on. The wide players need to play well because against the very best teams, when England haven't got possession, Harry Kane will get deeper and deeper and deeper. So how do you break forward? It's got to be the wide players. And if the wide players aren't playing at their best, aren't making the right runs, are indecisive when they get into good positions, England will struggle. But they have got pace. Madueke made a couple of good runs in behind. He didn't get his touch quite right. Rashford is quick, but he made poor decisions at times today. Gordon is quick as well. But they are the areas, if those players don't play particularly well, and they're not on top form, when teams are pressing England, how do they break out? How do they cause the opposition problems? It's got to be those wide players with their pace.
The bracket is still up in the air when it comes to England, who they're going to face in the next round. If DR Congo win, it will be them. If not, it looks like it will be Senegal. They will face then Mexico or Ecuador in the round of 16. And then it could be Brazil. Brazil probably, if you go with the odds, in the quarterfinals. And that's probably, am I right in thinking, that's where their journey will end?
At the moment, I would say yes, but there's obviously there's time for improvement. My question would be, would how, if that is the back 4 that played today, that was the back 4 that was going to go forward, how would they absorb a dominant, and they haven't, Brazil are not a side that's going to dominate the game like they used to do, but they certainly have good players. I don't think England will cough up some of the basic chances that Scotland offer them up. But that being said, can they, when you look at what Dembele and France did to Norway, who were organised, when you look at what Portugal could do, maybe Spain, if, as you mentioned in yesterday's show, they haven't lit it up yet, Spain, but they would be Konsa and Gay in that back 4, could they absorb a very strong Brazilian performance or a very strong French performance or something like that, and I don't think they could. So, quarter-finals at the moment for me is where I'm nailing my mast on the quarters, unless I see something different from England, which I haven't seen thus far, or even in the build-up to this World Cup.
Let's not forget, at the start of the tournament, England were 4th favourites according to the bookies to win the World Cup. France and Spain were favourites. We talk about Spain's problems, but if you compare England's performances over these 3 matches compared to that of France, it's night and day, Robbo.
It is, because we've watched a lot of games over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and they've been high-tempo games. I've been impressed with some of the ability of certain teams and the technical qualities of some of the teams. Whenever I seem to watch England, it's almost boring to watch England at times. You know, you expect more. You expect it to be played at a much greater pace. You expect the individuals in 1v1 situations to do more. And going back to Craig's point earlier on, when they play the likes of, I don't know about Mexico, when they play the likes of Brazil, they will go back to 2 holding midfield players with Declan Rice and Anderson, and Bellingham will play further forward. So they'll have even less creativity against the best side. So it's a big worry, I think, for Thomas Tuchel. And he's got to win over the fans at the moment, because the fans aren't pleased with the performances, even though they've topped the group.
One second, I'm just going to say, you know, Thomas Tuchel was brought in with this great experience, and listen, this tournament has quite some way to go, but I was hoping for more in terms of what I was going to see on the field from where Southgate was, and I don't think I've seen that thus far. Now, one of the things thrown out there is that, well, when it gets to the nitty-gritty and the crunch, if England get to a quarters or a semi-finals, he'll make the tactical decision that Southgate couldn't make. We'll find that out.
You did those air quotes a bit late.
But what I would say is, what we're seeing with England, to me, is a bit of a mirror image of what we saw at the end at Chelsea and what we saw in the Bundesliga with Bayern Munich.
Okay.
The football is and has become pedestrian, as Robin mentioned, a little bit boring and a little bit slow. And that's what Bayern were in the end. I mean, you look at the change in Bayern Munich when Vincent Kompany came in, it was night and day from Thomas Tuchel's team. His complaints was, I don't have this, I don't have that, I want a number 6. But the football was stale. And I think what we're seeing with England at the moment is, yeah, they've got the results, but the football is a little bit stale. On a platform where I think the winning team's going to come from somebody who's going to go out and try and grab that win, rather than try and be somebody that's going to sit there and defend for the win, which I think England will try and do when they meet better teams.